Hey guys, welcome back. I wanted to update you on where we currently stand with the election results from March 10, 2020, as well as updating you on where the pledged delegate numbers are for these candidates. So starting off with the results that we have thus far in the state of Michigan, a really strong and positive result from the former Vice President Joe Biden in an area that Bernie Sanders was very competitive with Hillary Clinton in 2016. Not quite as much this time around, currently about a 16 percentage point gap between Biden and Sanders, and really a big difference maker this time around in 2020 in contrast to 2016 is Joe Biden's doing a lot better with white working class voters and in a lot of these rural areas across states, for instance, like Michigan, and those are areas that Sanders was able to build a bit of a margin over Hillary Clinton. Wasn't able to do that this time around against Joe Biden, and that's the reason why we have quite a difference in 2020 in comparison to a lot of these state results that we had back in 2016. So then also Missouri was extremely close between Clinton and Sanders back in 2016. Not as much this time around, about a 26 percentage point gap there between Biden and Sanders. Also Mississippi expected to be very strong there down in the southeast for Joe Biden, and he cleaned up. He's sitting at nearly around 80% of the vote, with Sanders at around 16%. And then I said this in my prediction video that North Dakota, since it is a caucus, Bernie Sanders could potentially outperform there. And he was able to do that. In this caucus, he's ahead by about 14% with the vote in, and that one is in his camp as a state that he was able to pick up. Idaho, transitioning from a caucus in 2016 to a primary in 2020. He blew out Hillary Clinton in Idaho in 2016, but now that it is a primary, it was more beneficial to Joe Biden, and it was relatively close, but Biden ahead by about 6 percentage points. And then the state of Washington, too close to call, and they still have a bit of the vote that they need to count there. We can see it's extremely close. Sanders has a very slight lead at this point in time. Another one of these states that was a caucus back in 2016 where Bernie cleaned up against Clinton. It's now a primary, and that was a bit more beneficial to Joe Biden in keeping things competitive out there in the state of Washington. So those are the results that we're currently sitting on. So now I want to move over and fill in where we currently stand with the pledged delegate tracker. Now we know from Bernie's recent comments that he's staying in the race. He wants to go to the debate that's upcoming on March 15th to have a one-on-one contrast between himself and Joe Biden. He's yet to have the opportunity to do that with all of the debates throughout this past year, having many candidates up there on the stage. So potentially that's an area where Sanders can make the contrast needed to get some of the voters back behind him. It's a long shot at this point. Clearly, Joe Biden having a lot more success than anyone was expecting him in Super Tuesday, and now kind of the Super Tuesday 2.0 scenario here a week later, doing a bit better in some of these areas. But I wanted to go through and update where we currently stand with the pledged delegates. We don't have the votes in right now from Democrats abroad, so we'll go down to Idaho, where Joe Biden is at 11 and Bernie Sanders is at 9. And then in the state of Michigan, which had the most pledged delegates up for grabs out of any state that held an election yesterday. So we have Joe Biden at 72, and we have Bernie at 52. Still one left to be determined there. In the state of Mississippi, this is where Joe Biden absolutely cleaned up. Right now he's sitting on 31 with Bernie Sanders at 2, and still 3 left to be determined in the state of Mississippi. In the state of Missouri, Joe Biden is at 40 with Bernie Sanders at 23. And there's still 5 to be determined there in the state of Missouri. And there's not a ton of pledged delegates up for grabs in the state of North Dakota, where Bernie was able to pick up the victory. Biden is at 6, Bernie at 8. And then the state of Washington, still quite a bit of vote left to be counted there. They do all mail-in ballots, kind of an interesting system that they have out there in the state of Washington. And as of this current point in time, we see that Biden is at 17 and Bernie is also at 17, with still 55 of those pledged delegates left to be determined. So at this point in time, obviously, Joe Biden has the lead. He's not running away with things by any means, given the fact that he has 50% of the current pledged delegates that have been divvied up, with Bernie at 41%. But when you become the presumptive nominee, which many feel that Joe Biden has done at this point, that just makes it more likely that you're going to win by larger margins in the upcoming contest. So something really significant would have to change for Bernie to get back into the race at this point in time, especially with Bernie losing states that he was either very competitive or picking up as victories back in 2016. That he's not doing this time around isn't necessarily a great sign for him to have a serious, legitimate shot at going on and coming back in this thing. We can see that in terms of getting to the percentage of pledged delegates needed to win on the first ballot at the convention, Biden is about 43% of the way there. Bernie Sanders is about 35.6% of the way there. So those are the updates I wanted to do in this video, going through where the vote numbers currently stand in the states that had elections yesterday, March 10th, 2020, and then also going through and updating where we currently stand with those pledged delegate numbers. If I had to guess how much longer this campaign is going to last between Sanders and Biden, I would say we're going to go to the debate. Then we're going to have another set of states that are going to be voting next week. And if Biden has another strong performance there, then it's probably going to be a situation where Bernie Sanders would drop out. That's just my take on it. We'll see if that ends up being the case or not. But if we somehow get a situation where Bernie Sanders does really well in the debate and he can change the narrative, maybe he's able to outperform in the elections that are a week away from now. But there's a very slim chance of that happening at this point in time. At least that's what the numbers would indicate to us. So I appreciate you guys stopping by. It's kind of an unfortunate situation. I was hoping that we would have a competitive primary throughout this 2020 Democratic presidential primary cycle so I could continue to make interesting content for you guys. But as things look and appear to be kind of winding on the presidential side of things, continue to stick around with the channel. I cover not just presidential politics, but I also go through and keep an eye on exactly what's happening in competitive congressional districts, Senate races, governorships, as well as that general election presidential matchup. So there'll continue to be content for this election cycle in 2020 and continuing to go into the future. So I appreciate you guys again stopping by, and I hope to see you back here for my next video.